This video is brought to you by these YouTube members. Thank you guys so much for your support. Hello everyone and welcome to the top 10 speed autoing characters on Bleach Brave Souls. Like the tech one, this list will consist of characters who are really good at autoing. So just because a character is ahead of another character doesn't necessarily mean they're better overall, just for autoing. I've taken speed and reliability into consideration when creating this list, but these days you can pretty much auto with anyone as long as you build them correctly, meaning you have the right accessories and links. So keep that in mind as you watch this video.
簡単には死なせないよ。さて、覚悟をしておくといい。生きて恥をさらす覚悟をね。
Kicking off the list, we have Sennosuke, a character with a really high SP as well as Frenzy, Berserker at 40, and Bruiser at 40. Now we're so used to autoing characters being high attack characters, with either a really high Bruiser or Flurry, but there are exceptions to every rule, and Sennosuke is one of those exceptions. He is a ranged character and his normal attack is incredibly fast. He's able to get by just fine with his plus 40 Bruiser, and he's gonna deal a ton of damage when he uses his strong attacks. He's also got guard break, so those normal attacks will always deal a good amount of damage, and he's got havoc, so his strong attacks are always gonna reach further areas. Now the fast attack, decent bruiser, and guard break definitely contribute to him being good at autoing. But what really stands out is his strong attack too. It's not only a heal move but also a barrier move. This drastically increases the survivability of this character, and the attack itself is actually a vortex move that pushes enemies back. This helps push enemies away from Sennosuke if they get too close, which is exactly what you want for a ranged autoing character. Honestly, he's not the fastest on this list, but he is pretty reliable. He's got no affiliation, meaning that there's no enemies that are gonna have a killer against him, not in PvE anyway. So it means you can take him anywhere that Arrancars are the enemies. Just make sure you build him to be able to take a hit, if it does eventually come to that. Next up, we have Chad, who is undeniably great in PvP, but also a really good autoer. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a great killer, so he won't really benefit from any killer multiplications, but even so, he can deal a ton of damage, and he is extremely reliable. He's got a fairly decent attack as well as flurry and poise. On top of that, he's got a boost move strong attack 2 with Enhancer that increases his attack, defense, and focus by 33%, letting him deal more damage and be able to withstand more damage too. He's also got a damage reduction link that can be stacked up to 76%, and his strong attacks 1 and 3 can inflict paralysis, though he doesn't have Debilitator. Still, he is a great character to auto with, since he can withstand and deal a lot of damage, and thanks to his human affiliation, you don't really have to worry about enemies having killers against you, so you can pretty much take him anywhere. Now depending on the accessories you have on this guy and just how high his attack is, it may take you a bit longer to clear a quest, because he doesn't have a decent killer. That said, he is really reliable.
墓標を立てて弔うてやろう。恩師が二度と生まれてこぬよ。天体殺戮。
And continuing the trend of not great killers, we have Ichibe. This guy's got a really high attack as well as flurry and poise. He's also got Bruiser at 20, so he's able to deal extra damage with his normal attack, and he's got Berserker at 50, so even his strong attacks are going to deal a little bit of damage. His strong attacks 1 and 2 and his normal attack have a chance to inflict weakening, though it's not debilitating. Still, it does allow for a couple of seconds of extra damage, and it makes enemies not deal as much damage to you. And even if they're not weakened, they're likely not going to do too much damage to this guy. He starts off any event with 10 barriers that will remain for 20 seconds or until he gets hit 10 times. In addition to that, he also has a damage reduction link that can be stacked up to 76%, something that is reoccurring for all these autoing characters, as you'll find out. Ichibe is also completely immune to being paralyzed, which is amazing for PvE, but as I mentioned earlier, he has one major flaw, and that's in his killer. Since he has an Espada killer, he's not going to benefit from any killer multiplications unless he's going up against an Espada boss. That's not to say that he can't deal a lot of damage, but the speed in which you clear an event will likely be determined by how high you can get his attack stat. It's honestly a very similar situation to Chad's.
どいつもこいつもトロトロしやがって。行くぜ。
Next up, we have Kenpachi. Now there are many times that you're gonna want to use Ichibe and Chad rather than him, but that said, the resurrected version of this guy is not just a really good autoer, but also a really good link for anyone you're autoing with. Ordinarily, I don't take characters as links too much into consideration when making these lists, but for autoing, that does have to be taken into account. Now don't get me wrong, that's not to say you can't use this guy for autoing. He's still good at it. He's got a high attack, bruiser at 20, flurry, and poise. Plus he's got a boost move strong attack 2 that increases his attack, defense, and focus by 33%, increasing his damage output more than Ichibe's and Chad's. That said, he doesn't have enhancer, so it does only last 10 seconds, and the other two have more than just their attack going for them. The reason this Kenpachi is above him though, is because he's actually kind of hard to get rid of. For one thing, like the other two, he also has a 16% damage reduction that can be stacked up to 76%, meaning that enemies will only be dealing about a quarter damage than they normally would. Now obviously the same can be said for Chad and Ichibe, but the resurrected version of Kenpachi has an 80% last stage survival link, meaning that there's an 80% chance he comes back from the dead if he were to go down. And I don't think I need to tell you how useful this is when you're autoing, especially when you're going up against a boss and they use their special. Not only does it deal a lot of damage, but the possibility of status ailment is also there, and if he dies thanks to that, there's a good chance he just comes back. Even if you don't want to auto with this Kenpachi, he's an incredible link for anyone you do want to auto with, since he'll be decreasing damage by 16% and giving him a good chance to come back if they were to die.
手荒な方法で行くしかないかの。
Next up, and continuing the trend of terrible killers, is the fierce battle version of Yoroichi, who joins Ichibe and Kenny in having an Espada killer. The reason she's above him though, is because she can deal so much more damage. Not only does she have a high attack, but she's also got Bruiser at 40, Flurry, and an ability that increases the normal attack damage of Speed Soul Reapers by 20%. This means that on her own, she increases her own normal attack by 60% and then it hits twice, which is absolutely insane. She's also got Berserker at 50%, so even her strong attacks are gonna deal a little bit of damage, and her strong attack 2 is a vortex move. That's pretty useful when autoing, since it traps enemies in one spot and lets her attack them. Finally, there's her link. She's got a 20% damage reduction link that can be stacked up to 80%, meaning she's only taking 1/5 of the damage. While it does suck that she doesn't have a good killer, her ridiculously high damaging normal attack helps her clear an event at a respectable time, way better than other characters with terrible killers.
少し試してみるとしよう。今の君の目には何が見えているのかな。
あとは頼みます。
Now you've suffered enough, it's time to present the characters with good killers, and we're starting with the Parasol version of Aizen. Now this Aizen does have a really high attack. Unlike the other characters with a high attack on this list though, he does not have Flurry. Instead, he has a plus 80 Bruiser, which is still incredibly impressive. Plus he has a Soul Reaper killer, which, you know, finally a good killer. Aizen's also able to deal debilitating paralysis on all of his attacks, but he's very likely to do so with his strong attack 2. It's a vortex move that surrounds him, and it hits a large number of times, increasing the likelihood of inflicting paralysis and also doubling as a shield, staggering the enemies around him and keeping them from attacking him. Now unlike most of the characters we've seen so far, he doesn't have a damage reduction soul trait. Instead, he's got a normal attack damage rate that increases his damage by 20%. This does let him deal more damage, but it does mean that he's not going to be able to withstand as many hits as some of the other characters. Still, thanks to that killer, he is significantly faster in things like inheritance zones or drop it zones, or basically anywhere that multiplies a killer, and you can always build him in a damage reduction build anyway. Sadly, one of the things that does make him a faster character is his sprinter, but since you're autoing, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that. Still, the character is great, and it makes me hope that we haven't seen the last of the Parasol characters.
波と戯れるのもいいものだな。一緒に飲むか？
Next up is the most recent version of Swimsuit Halibel. Now out of all the characters on this list, she does have the potential to be the fastest one. She's got a ridiculously high attack, as well as Bruiser at 40, a normal attack damage link of 25%, and Flurry. That's a 65% normal attack increase on top of Flurry, making this Halibel's normal attack the hardest hitting consistent normal attack in the game. On top of that, she's also got Poise, meaning she doesn't stagger when hit, and she's got Berserker at 50, so her strong attacks are also going to deal damage. This Halibel's also completely immune to being weakened, and unlike all the other characters on this list with Flurry so far, she's got an Arankar killer. So yay killer multiplication. Like I said, she does have the potential to be the fastest on this list, but again, it's all depending on how you build her, since she's not quite as durable as some of the other characters on this list.
いくよー、ロクスクリッカ大戦乱舞。
Now Holly-Belle may be the one with the highest consistent damage on this list, but the honor for highest potential damage goes to the Orient Society version of Orihime. She's got a really high attack as well as poise, flurry, a bruiser at 30, and an ability that lets her increase the amount of damage she deals on lacerated enemies by 40%. And since she can inflict debilitating laceration on all of her attacks except for her strong attack 2, it's actually possible to deal 70% more damage before flurry with this version of Orihime, which is a lot of damage. And it can become even more damage, because her strong attack 2 is a boost move with Enhancer, making this Orihime's normal attack the highest damage potential in the entire game, not just this list. This boost move also helps her with her defense, since it increases it by 33% as well, makes her a bit more durable, which she does need considering she also doesn't have a damage reduction soul trait. Instead, she's got a strong attack recharge link, and it means she can use her strong attacks faster, including that boost move strong attack 2. Now Orihime is ranged, so she can deal all this from a distance, and both her first and second strong attacks help keep enemies away. Now being ranged does make her a bit slower than other characters, but it also makes her a bit more reliable, since there's a good chance she'll take out most of the enemies before they get a chance to attack her. To top everything off, she's a human, so much like Chad, you don't really have to worry about enemies having a killer against her, so you can pretty much take her anywhere that Soul Reapers are the enemies.
お菓子だこっちにも全部私のもんだ
Next up, we have the Halloween version of Lilliette, who is probably the hardest to kill in this entire list. Lilliette has a really high attack as well as bruiser at 20, flurry, and poise, so she's gonna deal quite a bit of damage. She's also got an Arankar killer, so you get the advantage of killer multiplications, and each of her attacks hit 4 times thanks to the flurry. This rapidly increases the combo and increases the damage you deal. Now Lilliette is ranged, meaning she does all this from a distance. She's likely to take out enemies before they get a chance to attack her, but even if they do, they're not gonna deal that much damage. She's got a 16% damage reduction link that can be stacked up to 76%, something that we've seen time and time again on this list. Unlike the other characters though, her strong attack 2 is a heal move, so any damage she does take she can just heal, and continue to deal a high amount of damage from a distance. Now I'll say out of everyone on this list, she's definitely the most reliable, though not the fastest. Now finally at number 1, we have the 5th anniversary Byakuya's Strong Attack 2. Now Byakuya's Strong Attack 2 is a unique character, as it's the only seeking vortex in the game right now. Once activated, it goes after the closest enemy, and once it takes that one out, it goes after the next one. And 5th anniversary Byakuya's Strong Attack 2 deals a lot of damage. It gets the benefit of having a plus 40 Berserker and Frenzy, and thanks to it having Sharpshooter, it never has to worry about breaking guards or being resisted. It also hovers over hidden enemies and waits for them to come out, and takes them out pretty quickly. Plus, thanks to a plus 20 Havoc, 5th anniversary Byakuya's Strong Attack 2 has increased range. Now this attack can only be used for 5 seconds at a time, but thanks to its host boosted 14% Strong Attack recharge link, you can pretty much build this Strong Attack to come back after around 2 seconds. And during that time, this character's host, Byakuya, can more than handle his own, since while they are hard to notice, he does have 2 other strong attacks, as well as a decent normal attack with a plus 40 bruiser. On top of all of this, 5th anniversary Byakuya's Strong Attack 2 also has 2 killers, that of Soul Reaper and Hollow, making him extremely useful in a variety of situations. And while yes, this character is ranged, you don't really feel the lack of speed, because it's a constant moving tornado of destruction. I'm still gonna say that both Lilliette and Orihime are more reliable characters, but because of its superior speed and versatility, I decided to put 5th anniversary Byakuya Strong Attack 2 at number 1. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for some more top 10 lists.